is to these companies, which is, do you still get a bunch of negative reviews and then die as a company if the product is actually really good?
Right, is it the bad reviews killing it, or is it the bad product itself? Right, with him going on to note that when he reviews a product, he's not trying to service the company that made it, he is trying to service the viewer on the other side. So he has to be upfront if he wants his review to be productive.
But the thing about reviews is, if they're not honest, then they're basically useless.
Marquez adding that a negative review can actually help a company, right? Noting that he once reviewed a phone that had a horrible vibrate function, and then when they showed Marquez a newer iteration of the phone, they said, hey, look, we fixed the vibrate. And that maybe doesn't happen if not for honest feedback. And then regarding whether he has ever killed a company by giving that feedback, he pointed back to another recent controversy when he gave a negative review of the Fisker Ocean car, that company being seen as being on life support for a few months after he published his thoughts.
First of all, I was not the only one to review the car, not even close. And so yes, the stock price did drop after my video, but the stock was in free fall for many, many months before my video too. And if you zoom out on YouTube or in the car review space in general, I was far from the only person saying these things about the car for all of these months.
Right, because while in both situations he kind of became the poster boy for that take, this was the general consensus, and the same applies to the human AI pin. He was not alone, and his thoughts were very much in line with others. Right? And so he closed by saying, you don't get bad reviews without a bad product. You know, something that also makes this extra silly is the fact that even people at Humane, they've been responding to his video more evenly than many others, with the head of new media at Humane even writing, all fair and valid critiques, both the good and the bad. Feedback is a gift. We reflect and we listen and we learn and we continue building. He's very good at his job, and I encourage him to keep doing his thing and to stay true to himself in the craft. But the last thing I'll say is I'm a little bit of a reviewer myself, and I give Marquez's video a 10 out of 10. You never quite know how a creator is going to react when the pressure is on, the heat is turning up. And this video also exemplified why so many people go to Marquez. In the face of so much stupid, he stood his ground and he let the world know the only people I'm responsible to are my viewers, people that might purchase products. And he did so in a thoughtful, smart, and measured way, even though the whole situation warranted a much more vicious response. And then people are tripping over themselves and losing their minds over how much money Caitlin Clark is going to make in the WNBA. But she's been the biggest name in female college basketball, hell, really all college basketball. She was also, as expected, the #1 woman picked in the draft, with it then quickly coming out that that will make her $76,535 in her first year in the league, with her 4-year rookie deal coming in at $338,056. With also a lot of people learning with that news that picks 1 through 4 earn that in the WNBA, with then people quickly comparing that to the NBA, where last year's #1 pick landed a 4-year contract worth $55 million. With people saying the fact that Caitlin's making less than 1% of her male counterpart, that's wild, especially since it can't be overstated what an impact she's had on the sport. But this year, the women's NCAA championship game brought in more eyeballs than the men's, averaging nearly 19 million viewers compared to the men at under 15 million. With all this, among those sounding off, you have other athletes like Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson, who wrote, "These ladies deserve so much more, praying for the day." And others saying things like, on this salary, Caitlin Clark would qualify for low-income housing in San Francisco. Hell, even Joe Biden spoke out, writing, "Women in sports continue to push new boundaries and inspire us all. But right now, we're seeing that even if you're the best, women are not paid their fair share. It's time that we give our daughters the same opportunities as our sons and ensure women are paid what they deserve." But here is also the reality. If I asked you, how many WNBA games have you watched in your life, what would the answer be? How many of the WNBA team names did you know prior to the draft yesterday? And understand, I don't mean this to shit talk, because I do believe that this is about to change, with the likes of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese leading the charge. But they are the wave, not the current reality. And the timing of all this is so important. The media rights deal for the WNBA, it is up. And the eyes these young women have drawn, those are going to be powerful. I have no doubt that viewership will go up, attendance will increase, more money will be spent, and there will very likely be many changes, including to salaries, with hopefully the athletes responsible for this change being the first to see the benefit. And sure, as other people have noted, the likes of Caitlin Clark, right, she's going to be fine. She's raked in tons of cash from endorsements and other stuff, but that's not the standard situation for a lot of the athletes in the WNBA. So I guess all of that is to say, I was personally not shocked when I saw that salary, and I'm also not going to be shocked when we all see those numbers go up in the coming years. And for those that were outraged, they want to see change, go buy tickets. go watch the games. It's a business and it's still in its early stages. I mean, hell, just think about this. The NBA rookie minimum is $953,000, right? And that's based on the NBA as we know it today. When Michael Jordan was drafted number 3 back in 1984, he made much less than that. When Michael Jordan was drafted 3rd overall, he made $455,000 his first year. Even if you argued about inflation, you're talking about $1.36 million, which is not that far from a rookie contract. And then, when I heard that 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list, it instantly made me want to remind you of the deal that you can get using my link at babbel.com/DeFranco for up to 60% off. Yes, really, and that's thanks to the fantastic partner of the PDS, Babbel. Where right now, you could move towards completing that goal of learning a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Because Babbel works because they focus on teaching you modern conversations that you use in the real world using native speakers, not computers. And Babbel's personalized learning content, real-time feedback, tracking, and visualizations help keep you focused and motivated. Plus, I think you, like I found myself doing, will really enjoy the sound that you hear when you get it right. I mean, one study even found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a semester at college. So if you're serious about speaking another language, what Babbel can promise you are useful language skills along with learning the context, traditions, and culture that the language you're learning is grounded in. So here's a special limited time deal just for y'all. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for you at babbel.com/DeFranco. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/DeFranco, spelled BABBEL.com/DeFranco. Rules and restrictions may apply. And then, so unfortunately, it is not a secret that we have a problem with police violence in this country. The US far surpassing most wealthy democracies in the number of people killed by police. But what's also notable, and what I really want to talk about today, is how many of these deaths actually occur when police are trying to avoid killing. And specifically, what I'm talking about here is what police call less lethal force, which is this catch-all term to describe common tactics used to stop people without causing, quote, serious bodily harm or death. Except when misused, that's often exactly what happens, as was the case when police murdered George Floyd in 2020. While that encounter was caught on video, it was forced in front of all our faces, many others throughout the United States have escaped notice. And the DOJ has actually acknowledged that its data on these types of encounters is incomplete, and they blame inadequate reporting from police departments. But it also doesn't make the information it does have publicly available. And that's exactly why this new investigation led by the Associated Press is so valuable. It gives a new understanding of exactly how big of a problem this is, with it finding, among other things, that over a decade, more than 1,000 people have died after police subdued them through means not intended to be lethal. And even more than that, the investigation has provided us with new insights into who is most affected, how these encounters typically play out, and why they keep happening. So let's dive in. Now, to be precise, the investigation logged 1,036 deaths from 2012 through 2021. This was a 3-year effort that involved 7,000 requests for government documents and body camera footage, the review of more than 700 autopsy reports or death certificates, and the uncovering of multiple videos that had never been published or widely distributed. And notably, the Associated Press says that the number is almost certainly an undercount, noting that many police departments blocked access to information, blacked out files and blurred videos, and shared reports that routinely used vague language or glossed over use of force. Right, but of the numbers that were known, 740 of the deaths were the result of the same supposedly non-lethal tactic that killed George Floyd, a so-called prone restraint, where the person's held face down on their stomach, often using the officer's body weight. Then you had 538 deaths resulting from a taser or a stun gun, and in dozens of other cases identified by the AP, people died after being given sedatives without consent, with strikes from fists or knees, takedowns, and other restraint devices also commonly being used. And notably, these deadly encounters happened all across the country. They happened in big cities, suburbs, rural areas, but most commonly they occurred in or near the home of the person who was killed. And while those who died came from all walks of life, there were some trends that stuck out. Like, for one, the vast majority of those killed were men, usually in their 30s and 40s, though the youngest was just 15 and the oldest was 95. Also, many victims were impaired by medical, mental health, or drug issues. And perhaps most notably, though not surprisingly, Black Americans were disproportionately affected, making up a third of those who died despite representing only 12% of the US population. And the reason that I say it's not surprising is because this is reflective of the same trend we see again and again in this country when it comes to policing, with just one example of this being the Justice Department's own findings that Black people account for more unjustified stops for minor offenses, more illegal searches that produce no contraband, and more instances of unnecessary force or arrest without probable cause. The 2015 case of Donald Ivey Jr., it's one of those cases where you see these different aspects of race, mental health, and the use of force converge. He was a 39-year-old Navy vet with schizophrenia, and police thought that he looked suspicious because he was walking with a lean and only had one hand in the pocket of his coat, though his family argued that he was just racially profiled. And while Ivey was cooperative at first, he began to resist when the officers laid hands on him, which is also a known trigger for some that have severe mental illness. This led to the officers tasing Ivey, chasing him down, beating him with batons, tasing him several more times, and then putting him in a prone restraint. And after Ivey stopped breathing, the department quickly ruled that the officers acted appropriately and blamed a medical crisis for his death. And so what we also see with this tragedy is another one of the key findings from this investigation, that officers regularly resort to force force even in circumstances that aren't imminently dangerous to them. In fact, it was actually only in about 30% of the cases looked at by AP that the police face potential or clear danger. And something that's been noted there is it doesn't necessarily also mean deadly danger. It was often someone taking a swing at the officer or charging them. Though I should also note with that, right, there were cases where police made a real effort to subdue a suspect non-lethally even when their lives were on the line, such as when 3 Massachusetts officers arrived on a scene where, quote, a 6'6" bodybuilder was stabbing